Rahubat, greetings. Musba'u Yassar and our YouTube family out there. Real quick, just want to make sure that everyone is able to hear me. If you're able to hear me, please press 1. That's important. So I just want to make sure that the sound quality it's okay. So if you can just press 1 or 0 if you can't hear me. 1 if you can hear me and 0 if you can hear me. Great. Wonderful. For those who are new and for those who are going to watch the recording, for those who do not know me, my name is Peti Sina Tebtu Urae, and I've been a 30-year student teacher of the profound doctrine of the master teacher, known as Panabab Yananan, also known as Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, who has been teaching us our ancient culture we call Wu-Sabat, also known as Wu-Nawap. He's been teaching our ancient culture now for somewhat 50 somewhat years. And in our culture, Wu-Sabat, Wu-Nawap stands for those who make decisions based on sound right reasonability in harmony with natural nature based on the principles of Ma'at. And one of the reasons why we've been teaching this ancient culture due to the fact that what we have been arguing for the last 50 some odd years is that our people's decision-making abilities is not reasoning out. We're saying that the suffering that Black people are dealing with around the globe is due to their reasonability, is due to their decisions. And so the solution to the problem, we argue, if we as Black people get back to how our ancestors made decisions based on the principles of Ma'at, based on the wisdom of Tahuti, is how our ancestors lived in harmony with natural nature. We now live a culture around the globe which is perpetuated by Western culture, and Western culture, for the most part, lives complete opposite to that. It lives in adverse to natural nature itself, and this is why we argue the world is in turmoil, the world is in chaos due to a culture that does not acknowledge nature as the primary ruling force. And this is something our ancestors have lived by. Anyone who knows anything about African culture has always been about nature, being in harmony with nature, acknowledging the power and force of nature. In today's culture, they'll say that that's animism. And this is where Wu-Nawap comes out of. Wu-Sabat is a product of animism, meaning existence is animated, life is animated. Life is a process of creation of nature itself. All is a part of this creative force, and the goal of humanity is become one with this creative force. The goal of humanity is live in harmony with this creative force, not to be adverse to it the way Western culture is. And so we're saying that the suffering that we as Black people, we got away from that ancient culture that we identify or call Wu-Sabat or Wu-Nawap. And once we get back into this ancient culture, the problems in which we're dealing with would be resolved. And so we, myself, who being a student of the master teacher for now some over 30 some odd years, have dedicated our lives to re-educating our people how to get back to this ancient culture, Wu-Nawap, Wu-Sabat. And this is what our focus is. So for those who are new, who are watching the recording, we say welcome. We say join us every Tuesday. We go live. We're doing these recordings every Tuesday from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. to address questions and answers pertaining to what we teach about. And that's our goal. Our goal is to try to help the public as best as we can, to re-educate us, to get back to a lifestyle and a culture that works for us as a people. Now, one of the things we do in the beginning, one of the things I've said, we want to open up before we get into the class. We tried to introduce the students of Wu-Sabat into our prayer system. and the importance of language. Now, let me just say this. I've talked about this before. The religious theologies of the planet, whether it be Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, are nothing but byproducts of our ancient culture. Okay? A little unknown fact that a lot of people don't know: Judaism comes out of the ancient Greek culture, and that's a discussion all to itself, and we'll get into that at a later date. And Christianity comes out of the Roman culture, and Islam is a copy of Christianity and directly Egyptian culture, meaning this: the Greeks ruled Egypt, ancient Egypt. The Romans ruled ancient Egypt. And this is where they learned the cultural principles of our ancestors and turned it into religions. And so our ancestors had a systems of prayer, had spiritual systems that were designed to keep us in harmony and to keep us at one with the forces of nature. And we called it the Nathar. Some people pronounce it as Natir, but the correct enunciation we teach is Nathar, which are the principles of nature. And that's where the word nature comes from. The Greeks are the ones who coined the word nature, and they learned that from our ancestors, and we said Nathar. And these are the principles and forces of nature. And we use prayers and chants to calibrate our body, to put us in harmony with these forces, and to put us in contact with our ancestors who existed on higher dimensions. And so this is why we had a prayer system. A prayer system was designed, again, one, to keep us in harmony with nature and to make contact with our ancestors who existed on higher dimensions. And so we had a combination of prayer and meditation. Prayer was a system of speaking to our ancestors, and meditation was a system of listening, learning to listen to our ancestors' responses. These were ancient practices and rituals that we once did that we got away from. And like I like to joke around and say, when we used to be in harmony with nature, today we're in harmony with Chuck E. Cheese or Netflix or McDonald's or the latest rap music out there. That's what we're in harmony with. And with the Kardashian and Kanye West getting divorced from what's her name? What's that girl? The Kardashian girl. We're in harmony with that. Donald Trump and what he's doing, and Joe Biden, what he's doing. We're in harmony with everything but what we should be in harmony with. And we're wondering why our lives are in chaos. And so this is what we're dedicated to, re-educating our people what we should be in harmony with, which is nature, because that's where we get our life and substance from. Meaning we could not exist without the earth. We could not exist without the sun. We could not exist without water. We could not exist without the vegetation that the earth provides for us. Nature is what gives us our substance, and yet we're totally not in harmony with it anymore. We're relying on Walmart to give us apples, and our local grocery stores. That's insane. They call and then they got the nerve to call that modernization. There's nothing wrong with modernization in the sense of learning to do things a better way. There is something wrong with modernization when it takes you away from the principles that sustains your life, which is nature. Then there's something wrong. And that's why today's food supply is what they call GMO, genetically modified organisms. They're getting away as much as they can from nature itself, to the point where they're even talking about, well, not talking about, they are doing cloning people and integrating people into computer systems, becoming cyborgs. Actually, this is what this guy Elon Musk, that billionaire guy, is talking about, how he wants to integrate consciousness into computer systems. So you can't get no farther away from nature itself and concepts like that. And so this is what we are adversely totally against, that our problems will not get resolved until we get back in harmony with the forces of nature. Now, and the way we do that is part of that is our prayer system. So I'm going to pull this up so you guys can see it. And let's see. Okay. Now I'm going to read through it in our language, which is Sabaean, right? And you guys can follow along by reading the English translation. Is right there below the Sabaean words. So you guys can follow along as we go through the prayer system. Now, here's my goal. Now, our prayer system, we encourage students to do the prayer system 3 times a day. 9 a.m., 3 p.m., and 9 p.m. I repeat, we encourage students to do the prayer system 3 times a day. 9 a.m., 3 p.m., and 9 p.m. Okay, so that's very important. Why? For one, we encourage those time slots. We want to create synchronicity. We have the ability to connect and communicate with each other spiritually by saying certain tones. We can connect with each other spiritually on this realm, and these are ways in how we learn how to connect with our ancestors who exist on higher dimensions by using certain sacred tones. And these prayer systems is the gateway to assisting you with that. Also, by saying these prayers in our language, it calibrates your body. It calibrates what we call your morphic resonance. And that's something we're going to talk about today is morphic resonance. Okay, so let me begin. Abdul Kalam Namasat Ubazun Aman Kasamun Afa Pa Paut. Anuki Jawab Pa Ashuk M Pa Paut. Wu Kale Ashuk Kawun Jawaf Naya. Anuki Kasamun M Pa Paut. Wu Pa Paut Kawun Kasamun M Naya. Anuki Wahu Ama Pa Paut. Wu Pa Paut Kawun Wahu Ama Naya. Naku Kador Naju Ama Kasamun M Pa Paut. Wu Khabub Ama Shikasun. Naku Kador Kawan Kale Pafaf Naku Daya Jawab Pa Paut. Ama wasu ama dayani kuun lake bakui jawab pa paut. Anuki yabab binafasni. Pa paut kawun. Anuki. Pa paut kador. Nakuk kador. Pa paut amu. Nakuk amu. Lahehum manahnun. Layahum manahnun. Ahum ata karahum. Ahum ata karakum. Ahum ata karanun. Ahum ata juefnaya. Ahum ata nayawu anuki hum. Ye ashuk re'e. Asmua jaye nun. Ye unataru akfuk nun. Anun ata khara ukum. Ye unataru akfuk nun. Akfuk nun, akfuk nun. Ye unataru nun. Nun. Atun. Atun. Amen. Namaz or Wahu. Ye umufaku. Yehu, Yehu, Ye unataru. Yasaye, Yasaye, Ye unataru. Yehika, Yehika, Ye unataru. Ankum ata pa mufaku. Yehu, Yehu, Ye unataru. Ankum ata pa mufaku. Wu anu ata kharaukum. Wu Yehu, Yehu. Re'e. Yehu, Yehu. Akhfush enhu. Ye'un mukdam'u akhfuknun. Ankum mana yaka laduda salafunun. Wu yasa'unun. Mana yaka sawura pa ba'a. Mana yaka kawuna ka'u. Mana yaka ata akh. Mana yaka kawuna basha wu damam. Ye unataru mukdam unun. Akfut muftad nun. Anhu kawun munzal. Manapa Nataro, Akfush Enhu, Enhu Kawun Baba Yananan, Akfush Enhu, Enhu Kawun Atum Re'e, Akfush Enhu, Enhu Kawun Kafush, Namazo Talo, Ye Unotaru Salafunun, Akfut Nun Manapa Mujwa'u, Akfut Nun Manad Tagwa Huan, Ye Unotaru Akfut Nun. Maneh saya khayara. Akfut nun, akfut naya. Akfut nun, akfut naya. Ye unutaru nun. Namaz or rabu, pa tashun. Nakuk talub tashun bi pa nataru. Maneh pa laen lui tananu. Kala ranam atni at the lehe pa nataru. Wu kala namas or atni at the lehe kayat yatun lehe pa nataru. Pa sawa wu pa tarak. Panan safa kawun, pa sarat wu pa tarak. Z kawuna nazula laha enkum. Mana saba'at Wu-Sabat. Ama haday an'un Wu-Shafa'un. Mana salafukum Wu-Nataru. Ajula ya nafasukum. Afuk shana kawunkum. Pa sawat wu pa tarak. Pa haday an wu pa shafay. Annun tawa ankum. Lahab panan shafay wu alaj. Annun tawa ankun laha tim nasuinun. Annun tawa ankun laha ashuk kuma. Ankum ata salafunun. Annun ata khara'ukum. Annun talub the sakuma. Annun talub the sakuma. And so nun sayam nataru. And so nun salafunun. Annun ata muspa'u. Anun atun atun amun. Ye unataru nun. Ye mufta'u. Ye unataru. Ye atum re'e. Ye natar. Ye nun. Ye natar. Ye nun tat. Ye natar tat. Ye ha. Ye natar. Ye ha tat. Ye natar tat. Ye kak. Ye natar. Ye kak tat. Ye natar tat. Ye amun. Ye natar. Ye amun tat. Ye natar tat. Ye u mafkam uyi. Ye nataru. Ye atum. Ye natar. Ye shawah. Ye natar. Ye tafak natat. Ye natar tat. Ye sabab. Ye natar. Ye nat tat. Ye natar tat. Ye ashtat yenatar tat. Ye asar yenatar. Ye nababta hatat yenatar tat. Ye satak yenatar. Ye hara yenatar. Natar shalil pa meye. Ye haptu yenatar. Ye anaktat yenatar tat. Ye ha haratu yenatar. Natar shalil pa nawar. Ye nafatum yenatar. Ye mantu yenatar. Ye babti yenatar. Ye sakhamta yenatar. Ye hata harata yenatar. Ye bai bish yenatar. Ye fa yenatar. Ye basta yenatar. Ye enhutat yenatar. Natar shalil pa hawe. Ye anhu yenatar. Ye matat yenatar. Ye mahat yenatar. Ye kafre yenatar. Ye mishkanat yenatar. Ye warayeta yenatar. Ye kentimitu yenatar. Ye hika yenatar. Ye ma'at yenathata, ye horananta yenathata, ye she yenathata, ye sashat yenathata, ye mafta yenathata, nathara shalil pa taha, ye sabak yenatha, ye anap yenatha, ye khanum yenatha, ye khanash yenatha, ye fanum yenatha, ye saye yenatha, ye hakta yenathata, ye amash yenatha, ye sadaptu yenatha, ye atum re yenathata, ye dahutu yenatha, ye fawarat yenathata, ye sakata yenatata, ye ha yenatha, ye neheb ka'a yenatha, ye saka yenatha, ye ba'a yenatha, ye aka yenatha, ye imharata yenathata, ye waparata yenatha, ye sakha hatapta yenathata, ye merita sakata yenathata, ye sayeta yenathata, ye garata yenathata, ye sa inu yenatha, ye bahata yenathata, ye khanamta yenathata, ye manakta yenathata, ye khamam yenatha, ye mahatwi yenatha, ye kabef sinanafaf yenatha, ye da ambata Afaf Yanatha, Ya Meritat Yanatha, Ya Nisat Yanatha, Ya Imdadata Yanatha, Ya Nahakwata Yanatha, Ya Sakata Yanatha, Ya Anakta Yanatha, Ya Dadad Yanatha, Ya Tum Yanatha, Ya Wahu Yanatha, Ya Yasas Yanatha, Ya Anaku Yanatha, Ya Afterward Yanatha, Ya Satat Yanatha, Ya Sakatu Yanatha, Ya Ma'at Yanatha, Ya Nana Yanatha, Yem Nuit Yanatha, Yem Sataktu Yanatha, Yem Mukdalta Yanatha, Ye Warahasha Faf Yanatha, Ye Maratu Yanatha, Ye Amun Re'e Yanatha, Yehu Anu Ata Kaleh Jawef Pa'ut. Okay. Whoa. All right. I want to say I apologize because I said the whole prayer system and you guys did not get to see it because I did not share my screen. So I totally apologize for that because obviously I meant for you guys to be able to see the prayer system. And this is all of the prayer systems that I went through. Okay. Now I said this before. For those who want access to the prayers, I have no problem emailing this to anyone. All you have to do is put a comment in the comment section and let me know that you would like to have a email, and I can give you guys my email so that anyone who wants to email me can email, and I will give you access to the prayers. But I meant to be able to recite the prayers so that everyone can see it as I'm doing it and go along with it. But unfortunately, you guys did not get to see that. So I'm sorry for that. We won't make that mistake next time. Okay. We end our discussions also with prayer. So you guys will see it. We don't obviously go through the whole system like we do in the beginning, but we try to show you guys. So, but this is just, I'm scrolling down so you guys can see. I'm doing it fast, but you guys can see all that I read through. And again, for those who want to follow, definitely just ask, and I can, get you guys a copy of the prayer system. So that's extremely important. And we will be doing discussions specifically on this subject matter as we go through these classes. Okay. So I just wanted to say that. Now, okay. Today's discussion, this is a continuation of what we've been talking about, who is the master teacher, Dr. Malachi Z.K. York. In these episodes, I think is extremely important for anyone who's studying our culture and studying what we teach to be tremendously familiar with who we learned all this information from, who the master teacher is. And it's so much information. So that's why this is a process of trying to explain the master teacher, what he represents, what we teach, and why we teach what we teach, right? It is a process. Now, I try to say this a lot, and I'm going to say this again. We tell everybody, new and old, to watch our lectures more than once. We tell everybody, new and old, to watch our lectures more than once. Okay? Anyone who's reading our books, we're always taught to read our books more than once. This is extremely important for clarity, because anything that's new, first of all, anything that's new, when you first are introduced to something new, your mind picks up the data, but it does not, and it's darn it impossible to pick up all of the data, especially if it's new. It takes time for the mind to begin to identify with new data. Even if the data is not new, you heard it before. It's always for memory, for retention, and for comprehension, because we teach, do not just listen to what we say, study and comprehend what we say, analyze what we say, right? Because we always tell everyone it is important, once you choose to become a student of Wu-Sabat, you're obligated to teach the doctrine. That's the obligation of every student of Wu-Sabat. How could you teach something you don't truly comprehend yourself and having studied yourself? So this is one of the reasons why we stress this. Now, excuse me, I wanted to pick up on the core principles. We try to go through our core principles every week. This is something you must commit to memory. You must know these core principles inside and out, what these core principles represent, because this is the essence of what we teach. The essence of our culture is based around these core principles, right? So the first core principle I go over is the principle of Ashak, which stands for the power of love. Our whole doctrine is based around us learning to tap back into the power of love. This is where we get our spiritual power from itself, right? Our whole teachings is centered on what we say Ashak. It's centered on that, especially because we live in a world of chaos that's adverse to love. We live in a world of bloodshed, war, and famine, and poverty. And those things only exist because the ruling forces of this planet do not perpetuate the power of love. In fact, they perpetuate the power of disunity and disharmony and dissent and fear and bloodshed. And our culture is just the opposite of that. It's about love. It's a power. It's a force that can conquer all other adverse forces. When you put yourself in the power of love, in the body of Ashak, you can't be penetrated by negative adverse forces. This is why we teach this principle. Okay. The second principle is resurrection. Black people are descendants of the Nathar, which the ancient Egyptians talked about. Our ancestors were living gods and goddesses, and we are descendants of them, and we have the same capabilities as they are, as we're unfortunately, we're sleeping gods, and we must be reawakened. That's what we call a resurrection, and that is by the opening of your third eye. Our whole doctrine is based around that. That is what the master teacher came to teach, how to restore ourselves back into who and what we are. The next principle is Ma'at and the wisdom of the Hutui. Our whole doctrine is living according, as our ancestors lived, according to the principles of Ma'at, based on the wisdom of the Hutui. This is what allowed us to live in a community and a society of harmony and order, right? The fourth principle is relationships. African culture was always about community living. African culture was always about community living of, for, and by each other. It's completely adverse to capitalism, which is about individualism, individual achievement, individual goals. Everybody trying to do for self rather than do for the collective whole. African culture was based on a collective whole. That's why we have mass poverty until the Europeans invaded our lands 500 years ago and disrupted our whole culture throughout the whole continent. We didn't have all the sufferings that we're dealing with prior to the invasions of our lands. 500 years ago, when they started invading our people and warring with us and enslaving us. Just about all of the African communities and tribes were all living as a harmonious units, each different tribe. Next principle is morphic resonance and matrix, and we're gonna try to touch on that today. The next principle is what is soul and spirit. We're gonna be touching on that. The seventh principle is learning what Leviathan is. The European culture is based on Leviathan. It's called moon culture, which is the origin of religion. It means the culture that's adverse to nature, not being in harmony with nature. The second principle is health. What is health? First goal of health is a positive mind. That's the first point of health, positive mind. Our people, unfortunately, are destroying themselves because of their negative mind. That's why we constantly fighting one another. We stay in a perpetual negative mind, always blaming, always pointing fingers. We got to get back to a positive mind and always look at the glass half full, not half empty. Always look how you can overcome problems. Always focusing on the solution, not the problem. You don't ignore the problem. You identify the problem, but you're always looking at the solution. Don't wallow in your misery. Black people spend more time in America begging white people for stuff rather than focusing on the things we can do for ourselves without their assistance. Right? And that's all part of health, positive mind, negative mind. They say stress is one of the key leading causes of disease in the body. As African people, we need perpetual sunlight. As African people, we need perpetual water. Fasting is an aspect of health. Fasting, herbal diet, Dr. Sabi, herbal diet, right? And all the other brothers out there that's teaching herbs. Exercise. Perpetual exercise. Listen, you guys, exercise is a part of your health. It's a must. That's not a how can I say it's not like something that's a choice. It's a must. Rhythmic breathing. We put a book out on the breath, how to properly breathe. We don't properly breathe no more. Meditation is an aspect of health. Concentration exercises. That's another. Our people don't know how to focus on darn near nothing because we haven't learned to develop our ability to concentrate, to focus. These are things you must practice. Prayer is a part of health. Chanting is a part of health. And we're going to get into these things. And the last is the acknowledgement of Pa'ut, the creative force. The creative force, nature itself. And in our language, we identified it as Pa'ut, which is the creative force, the principles of nature. All is, right? And so these are the core principles of our doctrine. These are the core principles, what we've always taught. And we'll continue to teach. Now, when you choose to become a student of Wu-Sabat, there are goals as a student. 3 primary goals. This is important for you guys to notice. There are 3 primary goals once you choose to become a student of Wu-Sabat. Goal number 1 is you're obligated to raise yourself. That's resurrection. That's goal number 1, to work to perfect yourself. Correct yourself. That's your first obligation, to fix yourself, to develop yourself. All of the principles I said, learn to embody those principles through the different practices that we're teaching, right? So it says, raise yourself, study our doctrine as much as you can, daily practice daily rituals, right? Be positive, always be positive, and ashak is the key to accomplishing all our goals, always in the power of love. When you stay in the power of love, you stay in a positive mind, and negative forces cannot penetrate you, because you keep in mind, when negativity penetrates you, you lose focus. And when you lose focus, you're not productive. Next goal of all students of Wu-Sabat, once you embody the principles of Wu-Sabat, then you're obligated to fight this war of Leviathan. To fight the negative forces that are seducing our people, causing our people all the suffering they're dealing with. That's why we're teaching. We're teaching simply because we're at war with these forces of Leviathan. All of the lies and the misinformation our people are being educated with, that's making them or causing them to make irrational and bad decisions every day. Fighting Leviathan says this includes working to free Panabab Yananin, right? All students are obligated to help him. He's been, as I did a whole lecture on that. For those who know, for those who haven't watched the lecture, watch the one I did on the fact that the master teacher is innocent and they set him up. All students are obligated to work to get him out of there. You're obligated to promote Wu-Sabat to everyone. Become a student teacher. That's what fighting Leviathan is all about. Fighting everything these negative forces stand for. And the last goal is to work to build Sabbatia, right? We have to reestablish our land. We work to support each other in business. We help each other reach positive goals. We help to build our government. We must set up a landing zone for Panatharu in Africa, which means we need land in Africa that would be supported by an African government. We teach that it is important for us to eventually relocate back to the continent. It's a wrap for America. We've been teaching this for a long time. Now, it's not realistic for all of our people to go back to the continent, right? But for those who are striving to resurrect themselves, for those who are striving to reconnect with our ancestors, the continent is a very important place for us to relocate back and begin to set up shop. Of course, we have to be in harmony with the environment we go into, the communities that we go into, African governments, whoever we choose to connect with. But our goal is that we have to reestablish our land that the disagreeable ones took from us here, that we had set up in this country. They took our land. And this is where we practice our culture, was able to develop ourselves. We have a right to self-determination. And so this is the goals of all students of Wu-Sabat. For those who choose to or decide that they choose to become a student, you have goals, you have objectives. Next thing, what it means to be a Sabaean. What does it mean to be a Sabaean? These are your principles. 1, someone who cares and thoughtful. And if you're going to call yourself a Sabaean, you have to care. You have to be thoughtful when it comes to the conditions of our people and the suffering we're dealing with. You have to care about those things. 2, you have to be someone who's helpful, who's willing to help solve the problems we're dealing with. Number 3, someone who's responsible. Being responsible is able to respond to all types of situations. Number 4, someone who demands justice. Our people are constantly being treated unjustly around the globe. If you're going to be a Sabaean, you have to demand justice for our people. Someone who is righteous. Righteous. What is righteousness? To be able to make the right decisions. You can't make the right decisions without overstanding or studying right knowledge. That's what we teach. That's what the master teacher has been teaching for the last 50 some odd years, the right knowledge. It's all in our doctrine, all in our books. So you have to study our information. That's how you become righteous, making right decisions again. Number 6, someone who's positive and cheerful. Again, that positive mind. Being happy, love life. Don't complain about life. Acknowledge the challenge you deal. We're not here to teach people to be delusional. We deal with a lot of challenges. Acknowledge those challenges. But don't let those challenges put you in a negative, depressive state. Because I said, when you get in a negative, depressive state, it clouds your focus and your ability to reason correctly so that you can overcome the challenges. You have to maintain positivity. Number 7, someone who is loving and peaceful. That's the core essence of our doctrine. You have to extribute love, and you have to be someone who's peaceful. We're not warmongers like the disagreeables out there. Number 8, someone who's hardworking and clean. What they say, cleanliness is next to godliness. You got to be clean now. That's, again, the core principle of our doctrine. You have to be someone who's willing to work. This is not about lazy people. We don't have time to be lazy. We have so much things we have to do. And the first thing you have to work on is fixing yourself. What is fixing yourself? Work on your negative habits, your bad habits. That's one of the first things towards resurrection. You must overcome the negative habits you develop in this culture. And we have a lot. We all have these bad habits. And the last is someone who's kind and considerate. Be kind. I don't care to everyone. Be kind and be considerate of other people. Okay. So again, this is what it means to be a Sabaean. If you're going to say you are a Sabaean and you represent our doctrine, our culture, now you know what it means to be that individual. This is what you're striving to be. I'm not saying this is what you are right now, but this is what everyone who's in our culture, we're all striving towards these principles. Doesn't mean we've accomplished these things, but we are living for these things. Our obligation is to teach our children these principles so that they can live and embody these things. That's why we have to have our own system, our own society, our own land, so we can begin to live our culture without interference, because we live in these societies that's based around negativity, and it makes it hard to be positive. That's what I said. One of the things we have to do, if you go back to up here, goals of Wu-Sabat, and the goal number 3, I said right here, it says work to support each other in business objectives. We have to start supporting, what's that thing they call We Buy Black? We have to start supporting each other economically. Of course, positive businesses, things, positive things that you want to do, you do. But again, what they say, the Jews, they circulate their money like 19 times before it leaves their community. The Asians do that. Everyone does it except us, Black people. The minute we get a paycheck, it goes to someone else. And that's why we can't build wealth. And so we have to start supporting one another. We have to start supporting one another. We're Black people are constantly at odds with each other, always complaining about one another. And we have to overcome these again, like I said, these negative attributes and habits we learned by being introduced to these foreign cultures. We have the power to fix ourselves. We have the power to fix ourselves. We do not need to be worrying about no one else fixing us. We have the power to fix ourselves. That's my point. And that's what our culture is all about, so that we can be independent again. There's no reason why Black people should be worrying about white people taking care of them. Here in this country, Black people are so eager to vote for some white guy to rule them. Like, how many millions of people voted for in the States, Donald Trump or Joe Biden? Millions of Black people. This is ridiculous. We used to rule ourselves, and we got to get back to ruling ourselves. How are we going to keep complaining about white people and how they abuse us and take and mistreat us, and yet we keep supporting the same people that abuse us? It doesn't make any sense. We're running around talking about Black Lives Matter. White people have been killing us for 500 years. What makes us think they're going to change their mentality? That's not even rational. If someone is abusing you, what you do, you get away from that individual. But what is the problem with us? This is why we teach our people are under a hypnotic spell. It's called the spell of Leviathan. Irrational behavior. You're staying with someone who's perpetually abusing you. White people imprison us more. They make sure they miseducate us. They give us poison food to eat as diet. As you know, they shoot us down in the streets. They do all kinds of negative things to us. They keep us in poverty. They give us the worst jobs. What more do they need to do to us for the length of time to realize, okay, it's not in our best interest to live with these people? But our people keep making these irrational decisions to keep supporting the same system that abused them. And I'm saying, and the question is, why do we keep doing that? Because our people are under a hypnotic spell. they really don't. Their decision making abilities is really warped, and that's what our whole doctrine is about: re-educating our people about making intelligent decisions. This is what we have to get back to: intelligent decisions. So now, getting into the specific topic, I wanted to talk about incarnation. What is an incarnation, right? Something the master teacher has been teaching us about, and this is a book. It's called "The Man from the Planet Risk," that the master teacher put out. This book back in 1996, I believe, and he's explaining in this particular book what an incarnation is. This is very important because this is the essence of what resurrection is all about. All of us have what we call an oversoul. I talked about this, before. We all have an oversoul, and the goal of resurrection is to become one again with your oversoul. The master, that's what happened with him. He's one with his oversoul, and his oversoul is identified as Yanun. That is the higher soul force that his physical body became one with his spiritual body, right? And that's called his soul force, or what we call the oversoul. And so it's important for our people to understand this, because once you can comprehend, as he explains in Incarnation, right, and how he's an incarnation, then you can better comprehend how you too can become an incarnation. That is the whole goal of our doctrine, to embody your higher self. That's how you overcome the spell that's been put on our people. And this spell has been on us for the last 6,000 years. As I've been talking about it before, it's a spell of spiritual ignorance and racial blindness. Spiritual ignorance and racial blindness. Our people lost their spiritual insight. Our third eye used to be open, and we were able to see interdimensionally. We were able to see and identify different spirit forces that were adverse to us versus spirit forces that was in harmony with us. Now, because we're spiritually ignorant, our people are constantly being possessed by negative spirit forces, and that's why we're crazy. This is why we behave the way we behave. And the only way to protect yourself from spirit forces is you have to become spiritual cognate again. You have to become in tune with your own spiritual nature. And that's what we teach. This is what our whole, doctrine is all about. Now, if anyone has any particular questions, I have no problem in answering any particular questions that anyone may have on this subject matter. And if not, I'm going to try to get into this book. Now, The Man from the Planet Risk. Let's see. All right. Again, I want to say Wu-Sabat to everyone, for everyone who's in the chat, and Wu-Sabat to all of those who are watching the video recording. I repeat, if you're watching the video through recording, okay, join us on Tuesdays, guys. Join us on our live question and answer session on Tuesdays. Be a part of the family. Be a part of the solution. Help us get this, solve this problem. Let's see. First thing is, now this is one of the first pages. I want to read a quick synopsis of this, because I think this is important for you guys to be aware of. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger. You see, it says right here, this man has been known to us by many names. They're talking about the master teacher, right? Okay, this is images, different pictures of the master teacher. So I wanted to kind of scroll down and show you different images of the master teacher, different pictures he's taken over the years. And then it goes on to say, this man has been known to us by many names, yet they all bear the same meaning, but are merely different languages. He is known to us as Imam Isa and Isa Abdullah ibn Abu Bakr, as well as As-Sayyid Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi, then Rabboni Yeshua. He was called Amanubi Ra'akta, even Dr. York, and now we know him as Dr. Malachi Z. York. He tells us his galactical name is Yanun, and that he, in ancient times, was simply called Marduk or Michael or Melchizedek. He taught us that he would change names when his popularity here began to grow to such a point with the media that they would want to bring him to the public. And he would receive countless letters requesting him to go public. When various newspapers and magazines sought articles to get into his personal life, he merely laughed and said, all eyes shall behold me. Just look for a Dr. York poster. But taking him more seriously, everyone from his mother to his best friends would tell you there's something different about this man. All would say, I just can't put my finger on it. And I'm going to stop right there. Now, they ask a question. Just who are you? Answer. To answer who and what I am, you'll have to first understand who and what you are. And that class begins with understanding your genetics. Now, this is why I spent so much time trying to explain who the master teacher is, because, and really the order to comprehend who the master teacher is, you first have to comprehend who and what you are, because we're all the same. And that's what I said. You have to comprehend what we really mean by resurrection, what we mean by your oversoul, because that's all the master teacher came to teach. He came to re-educate us spiritually. And this is why so many individuals who come into our organization, and I've known many of them, they come into our organization and then they leave. And they've been in the organization for a decade, 2 decades, whatever, and then they eventually leave. Why? Because what you'll notice is a lot of students, unfortunately, never focus on developing themselves spiritually. They just became students who study the doctrine, but they never put it into practice. And I'm talking about spiritual development. They never put those principles and the concepts we teach into practice. If you're not doing the rituals, it's going to make it extremely difficult to comprehend what we're teaching. I repeat, if you choose not to do the rituals and things we're saying, from chanting, the prayers, the meditation, the concentration exercises, if you choose not to do these things on a daily basis, because this is how you raise your vibration, what you call your morphic resonance, and it opens up your consciousness. If you choose not to do these things, then it makes it extremely difficult to comprehend the doctrine. And I've seen many people leave this organization because they lost sight of what the principles of what we teach. And that's why I focus so much on the principles, because of my experience in being in this organization, seeing people come and go. What I've noticed is they never embodied the principles. They never lived according to the principles that we teach. And so, as I said, in order to really comprehend the master teacher, you really got to comprehend who and what you are, because it's not about him, it's about you. He's come to teach you who and what you are. But if you don't do any of the things that's designed to help you develop your own self, then everything he's teaching has no point. And that's why individuals leave. They leave because they never was able to see the God within themselves. They were so focused on the man, aka the master teacher. And this is the problem with Black people. They get so caught up in leadership and they don't focus on themselves. The master teacher is just that, a master teacher. He came to teach. And he came to teach you how to become a master. That's his goal. So I'm putting all this time trying to teach you about who he is in hopes to teach you who you are. Because all the master teacher has been doing is teaching principles of who and what we are and how to get back to who and what you are. You are the people who ruled this planet for thousands of years. And now we're being ruled by foreigners. That doesn't supposed to happen. We built those magnificent pyramids all over the globe. To this day, the so-called wisest of scientists have no clue how our ancestors built those pyramids in Kemet, aka Egypt. Not to mention, they're trying to take credit for it because they're trying to claim the Egyptians were white. The Egyptians were white. That's a bold-faced lie. White Africans, really? Egypt is in Africa, and they try for years to try to make it seem like Egypt is not in Africa. Egypt is in the Middle East. My goodness. As if people can't read geography. Egyptians are Africans, and you have those so-called white scholars that go out their way to try not to identify the Egyptians as Africans. Egypt is in Africa. Egyptians are Africans, and Africans are black with woolly hair. The Egyptians were black with woolly hair, guys. And they did magnificent things. They had magnificent abilities. These are in our bloodline. We have these same abilities. We just are asleep. That's all the master teacher came to teach. Now let's go. I want to go into another part in this book. All right, let's see. This here will talks about in the beginning he's breaking down genetics and things of that nature. Again, I repeat, for those who want to get access to our books, one, you can get a lot of these books you can get free on Scribe, so you guys can subscribe to Scribes online. Kabeta, can you type in Scribes for the audience, and you guys can get free to Scribes and download. We put a lot of books on there for free. A lot of our older books and even some of our newer things are on Scribes, so it's free. And then we have bookstores along the East Coast called All Eyes on Egypt, so you guys can go to any of the bookstores on the East Coast called All Eyes on Egypt to get access to our books. Again, you can't call yourself a student of Wu-Sabat if you're not studying the doctrine, the information. Because like I said, one of your obligations is to become a teacher. You have to teach your family and friends. The whole goal is to help our people correct how they're making decisions. The decisions that Black people making every day around the world is killing us. The decisions on how we choose to eat, the decisions who we choose to lead us, the decisions of the philosophy and cultures we're choosing to follow, these things are harming us. And we got to get back to making intelligent decisions that enhance our lives, not destroy our lives. Our people are doing drugs. They're doing all kinds of crazy things, making crazy decisions that's destroying us. Okay, great. Okay, so question. Okay, the question was, do y'all believe in the Bible at all? If not, why do you quote it? Okay, good question. I talk about this all the time. I just said it in the beginning. Okay, and pay attention to this answer because I say this a lot. We teach this a lot. Okay, all three religions. Okay, all three religions: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam were all plagiarized from our ancestors, from our ancient culture. I repeat, all three religious dogmas, Christianity, let's start with Judaism. Judaism was created by the Greeks. I repeat, the Greeks were the Jews. I repeat, the Greeks were the Jews. Now, that's a whole discussion all to itself of educating you what that really means. But think of it this way. The first Bible, the so-called first recorded Bible that was put together by who? The Greeks. Now, why would they do that? Not only that, guess where they put the Bible together at? It was put together in ancient Egypt. All of the ancient Christian manuscripts, guess where they find them at? Egypt. Look it up. The Romans. Who's the first? What was the first church in Christianity? The Roman Catholic Church. Where were the Romans ruling? Who were the Romans ruling when they started this so-called Roman Catholic Church? They was ruling Egypt. The religions were plagiarized from the Hebraic religion, the Christian religion, and Islam. All three of those religions were plagiarized from Egyptian and Sumerian culture. I repeat, all three of those religions were plagiarized from Egyptian and Sumerian culture. That's important, you know. So when the question's asked, well, why are we quoting from the Bible? A lot of that stuff is our doctrine that they change the stories around. That's why, like, if you watch, I like the movies, Robin Hood movies, right? But you know how many Robin Hood movies they got? They got the Kevin Costner Robin Hood, the Prince of Thieves. You have Russell Crowe did a Robin Hood movie. You have what's the name? Just did a Robin Hood movie. I was Jamie Foxx and this other guy. Same story, written three different ways, right? Same story, written three different ways. And so that's what they did. They took our culture and they rewrote the stories around. So when you had Jesus and Mary and Joseph and God the Father and the Holy Ghost, that they just changed the names from Asar and Aset and Horus and Khonsu. They copied our stories and they just changed it around. This is what the Romans did. The Greeks did the same thing. A lot of the prophecies, if you read the book of Revelations, most of those prophecies was written by our ancestors in Kemet. And they took those things. They rewrote those stories around, took the credit for them. Like the whole, I tell everybody, read the book of Matthew chapter 24. It talks about this time cycle, the so-called end of the world. Those are real stories in the Bible. I'm just trying to tell you, this stuff was plagiarized. Let's see. Was another question. What was it? Okay. The question was, how do the 99 elements relate to the 99 Natharu? Why is a element a tribute to the deity? Great question. Okay, now think about it, right? When we say Nathar, what do we say Nathar means? Right? We translate the word Nathar or Natir, the word Nathar or Natir, I said it earlier. Excuse me. The word nature comes from who? The Greeks. So Nathar and nature are one and the same. And so when we talk about the forces of nature, the principles within nature, we say what our ancestors saying, that our ancestors represented those same forces, those same principles, aka the same elements. And so the primary elements that you find on the periodic table, the 99 plus 1 elements, represent the same principles of the Nathar. That's why if you study, we talk about the Khamunu in ancient Egyptian culture and the Sebdeptet, and they call the Sebdeptet, they translate it as the Enad, right? And it means it represents the 9. Okay. Now, when you have the first principle of the Sebdeptet is Atum Ra'e. What is Atum Ra'e? The sun. What does the sun represent? Hydrogen and helium. Right? Then you have, and then it says Atum Ra'e gave birth to who? Atum Ra'e gave birth to Tafaf Natat and Shawa. What does Tafaf Natat represent? She represents Maya, water. What is water? Water is oxygen and hydrogen, the 8th element. And Shawa represents what? The air, another element, another principle, which is of obviously of ether and water. And then they gave birth to who? You have Tafaf Natat and you have Shawa or Shu. They say Shu and Tefnut. They gave birth to who? Geb and Nut. We say Geb is Sabab and Nut is Nutat, right? Geb and Nut gave birth to who? Oh, excuse me. Geb and Nut represented what? Geb represented the earth and Nut represented the sky. Again, all of the elements of the earth, all of the 99 elements is within the earth. And our ancestors always acknowledge the different principles, these forces in nature, because we as Africans are made of the same forces. Our bodies are made of the same forces. And so that's why our whole culture is based on becoming in tune with nature again, being in tune with these forces. That's why we said you got to calibrate yourself. You have to. The reason why we do the prayers and chants is you got to recalibrate our bodies. We got to correct what we call our morphic resonance. And when you recalibrate your body, you get your body back in harmony with the tone called the A tone, the Ah tone. Okay, and that's why we chant Om or Amun. We chant Amun, and that recalibrates the body back into the A tone. Okay, now why do we calibrate our bodies back into the A tone? Because once you recalibrate your body back into the A tone, you're able to calibrate. Then you'll be able to tap into the F tone. What is the F tone? The F tone is the frequency of the planet Earth. And that's how our ancestors used to be in tune with the earth. And so we used to know if a tsunami was about to come, a hurricane was about to come, or a drought was about to happen. We was in tune with the forces of nature because we was a part of those forces of nature because we came from those forces of nature. Okay, and so that's why we teach to be in tone with those three tones: the A tone, the F tone, and the C tone. What is the C tone? The C tone is the tone of the universe. And that's how we are able to make interdimensional communication with our ancestors who exist on higher dimensions. You cannot contact them until you recalibrate your body back to A. And the only way to calibrate your body back to A is through the chanting and the rituals. Everything about European culture is to get your body out of harmony, out of frequency, out of tone. The music he plays, the language English that we're speaking, all of that it uncalibrates your body. The bad food we eat, everything about European culture takes us out of harmony with nature. So I hope that help. Now, what was the other question? Yes. About the clones. What did it say? Yeah, no, I know. Hold on. They also say, is it possible to make simple videos apart from the live reading all the prayers so we can understand how to express correctly, knowing that not everybody knows the language yet. Yeah, no, absolutely. We definitely we definitely could do that. And like I said, if you need a copy of the prayers, I'll send those. I'll send those out to anyone who wants a copy of them. Okay, so I have no problem trying to do lessons just on that. Uh, so that's definitely, you know, a must. Next one, belief means not to know. That's right. Wow, are those clones? Yeah. Now let me go back up for the question. Are those clones? No, these are actually duplicates. All of these people right here. Let me. I'm gonna do it slowly. Okay. And go back up, 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 up. Okay, this is talking about duplicates. You see this question: do duplicates live amongst us and function like everybody else? Right? Do duplicates live among us and function like everybody else? Yes, many live among you today, knowingly and unknowingly. They don't have to be American or Caucasian or African or Asian. Race and nationality does not matter. In actuality, there is no such thing as nationality because you can line up various people and start putting them in order according to features, and you will see similarities in all people. For instance, you ever seen a person who has Oriental features in every race of people, no matter what color the people, no matter what color the people, you'll see the same trait. Caucasoids with Oriental eyes, but a Caucasoid face structure, and no one in their family is Oriental. Now, why is that? Then it says clones can be of the same race or mix. Sometimes people run into their clone or a person that looks, acts, and has the same facial expressions as they do. It could be their favorite actor, entertainer, or politician, like the ones listed below. These are just a few famous people that look alike. And so this is the breakdown that he gives on the different people that have similar features. And this is dealing with spirit forces and AKA morphic resonance. People can share the same spirit forces, and by sharing the same spirit forces, that when that spirit force incarnate as a human, the genetics come out similar, and so they will look similar, and so they have a spirit connection. Okay, again, remember I keep saying this: what the spell did to humanity is made everyone spiritually ignorant. This is knowledge we used to understand spirit forces. One of the reasons why we used to teach you don't mix your race, because you take in different spirit forces, and that's why the whole planet now is mixed. And so you got Caucasian people with African spirits, and you got African people with Caucasian spirits. It's a very involved subject matter, and it's very complex. Okay. And this is what the master teacher said. In order for you to comprehend who he is, you got to comprehend what you are. And by comprehending what you are, you have to identify your own spiritual nature. You have to learn to tap into your own spiritual nature. Now, I will warn you, and I said this before, when you're dealing with spirituality, you only go into spirituality with a positive mind, because all of us have been invaded by negative spirit forces. And you can get possessed if you're messing around spiritually and you don't understand what you're doing. The first principle is a positive mind. The first principle is love. So when you're tapping in and you're doing spiritual rituals, you want to contact or be in harmony with the positive forces in your nature, not the negative forces that causes you to do all your bad habits. All your reason why you have bad habits is simply because of the negative spirit forces in us. It's in all of us. It's in all of us. This is where we get our bad habits from. We drink, we curse, we eat bad food, we're negative, we like things we shouldn't like. All of that comes from the negative spirit forces in us, the disagreeable forces. that makes you do things that's detrimental to your body, your physical body. And remember, we live in a culture that perpetuates all of these bad habits. They got cigarette commercials. They got alcohol commercials. They put famous, like, Snoop Dogg is doing this commercial I see almost every day now. What's that? What that beer he's promoting? That beer, Corona. What's that? Corona. He's on the beach, And then they got the nerve to make the commercials seem so inviting and all, and it's enticing you to do something negative. That's the nature of the disagreeable ones who run this planet right now. Always coercing us, telling us to take drugs. They say that, this drug, this pill will heal you of this, but this drug also can give you a heart attack, or this drug can give you suicide intentions. I'm like, what kind the hell is that? That ain't helping me. It fixes one thing and causes a whole nother problem. Only a demon would do something like that. The master teachers used to say all the time. He says, I'm like, why do they tell you the speed limit is anywhere from 55 miles an hour to 75 miles an hour, but they give you a car that goes 100 miles an hour or 200 miles an hour? What kind of being does that? I'm like, why didn't you just make the car 70 miles an hour if that's what the speed limit is going to be? So obviously, somebody is teaching people to do things that's against their own best interests. Those are negative spirit forces. And these spirit forces is within humanity. And that's why humanity is so freaking negative and warlike and disagreeable. But I'm here to tell you, as Africans, that is not our original spirit forces. Okay? Because our bloodline got corrupted, we now have these spirit forces in us, and we have to learn how to exercise those negative spirits out of us. We have to learn how to perform our own exorcism, excuse me. We got to get these things out of us. And that's through the rituals, practicing and mastering the rituals. And you can then exercise those negative spirit forces out of yourself. Let's see. Who's clones? Those people. What do you say? Oh, okay. Rahul back. I agree. Blah, blah, blah. Facts. Who is the Most High? Is there a Most High? What role does Amun play? Okay. Great question. All right. Okay. Now, keep this in mind. When the master teacher, right, was educating us in the school of Islam, for those who know that, we will call Ansar Allah, which is a Islamic tribe. The Ansars is a culture that comes out of the Sudan. I repeat, it's a culture that comes out of Sudan. The Ansars live in the Sudan today, and its connection is to Islam. But the Ansars are what we call Sufi Muslims. Now, for those who are familiar, anything about Sufi Muslim is Sufi Muslims is about they're totally different from what a Muslim is. I don't know if that's the best way I can say it. Sufi Muslims basically teach about becoming one with the creative force, or one with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Muslims call their deity Allah, right? Now, Allah. Now think of it, the word Allah. Allah actually is that A tone I said we learned to chant. Okay. Now, as a Sufi Muslim, the goal was to become in tune or in harmony with the force, the creative force we identify as Allah. That was always our goal, this creative force. Now, what we taught is that you have, from the creative force, you have spiritual beings, very advanced spiritual beings who personify from this creative force. And we teach that as African people, we are the descendants of those spiritual beings. And those spiritual beings have lived by certain principles and orders. In fact, they're the ones who live by the principles of Ma'at. Now, we taught and teach that those spiritual beings are identified as Riskians. That's why the name of this book is what? The name of this book, and this is page 20. Go back to the top. The name of this book is what? The Man from the Planet Risk. The Man from the Planet Risk. Why? Because Riskians are advanced spiritual beings who, in essence, they monitor the universe. In fact, that's what the whole Guardians of the Galaxy movie they talk about. Well, they really get that from us, and who are the Riskians, who are the guardians of the multiverse. These are beings who basically police the universe. They are the spiritual beings that grew creation, and we come from these beings. These beings are the how can I say, the ruling forces within nature itself, and we come from those beings. So when we talk about a Most High, I know that goes back to our doctrine when we were teaching in the 90s about Anu. And we said that Anu, the word itself, meant the Most High. And there was some beings more advanced than other beings. Okay? But what I'm trying to say is that this principle of the Most High is really a tribute to the Riskians as a whole, as a soul force or a spirit force. These are the most advanced mental beings that exists in the multiverse, then and now. And so I don't want to get confused, or I don't want someone to get confused about what we were teaching in the 90s versus what we're trying to educate our people today about the principles of these beings, the principles of the Riskians. Because we always taught about the Riskians. Right? From the very beginning of our doctrine, we was always trying to educate people about who these forces are, these universal forces, they're also known as universe scientists. And so when you get into the concept of the Most High, again, that was something where we would teach some of the wisest beings that exist among us. But really, the wise beings are these Riskians. These are the ones who monitor the omniverse, not just a galaxy. These beings are in harmony and tune with the multiverse itself. And that's who's actually teaching us, a Riskian itself who incarnated. That's what I was trying to get into. This whole discussion today is about incarnation, and what an incarnation is. And so, in fact, let me just read this right here in this particular book. This is what a master is going to talk about him being an incarnation. It says, question: you have been teaching undisputable facts for over 25 years. How did you manage to learn and teach so much information for the amount of years you have? Right. So this book was written in 1995. So 25 years has been, they're referring to when he started teaching in 1970. Okay. Now, he goes on to say, I'm a being from the 19th galaxy called Ilium. We have been coming to this planet before it had your life form on it. I manifest into this body, because this is a spirit being talking now. I manifested this body into this body to speak through this body. I am an entity or an etheric being. We watch the 3 other cycles of 18,000 years, which is 2 moon cycles and 1 sun, which is part of your 24,000 year cycle, the equinox. The removal of the dust cloud from light to darkness, then to light again. I incarnated into this realm from time to time. My incarnation as an Illa Mutajasid, or an avatar, was originally in the year 1945. In order to get here, I traveled by one of the smaller passenger crafts called Sham out of a mother plane called Makerba or Nibiru. Now, we don't say Sham today, because that's a Sumerian word. We say Hinu, just so you know, which is an Egyptian word. So the craft is actually called a Hinu. He goes on to say is this. Then in 1970 was my time to come in flesh to start my work of breaking the spell of sleep, also called the spell of Leviathan or Kingle. So now keep in mind the baby child called Dr. York, this spirit force incarnated into him as a baby, which that was his higher spirit force or his oversoul. Now, his oversoul really didn't make itself present in him until he became of a mature age, which is in 1970. He was 25 years old, just so you guys know. But let me keep going. He says, then in 1970 was my time to come in flesh to start my work of breaking the spell of sleep, also called the spell of Leviathan or Kingle. The moon spell or lunatic state of mind with the power as a son of righteousness. If you refer to Malachi, the book of Malachi, chapter 4, verse 2. Now, Earth astronomers thought it was a comet, which they called Bennett, that appeared on March the 16th, 1970, 4 months before my 25th birthday, which is June 26, 1970, which is the opening of the 7th seal, which marked the beginning of the Aquarian age. And so he goes on to say, then let me skip over that. It says, I, Yanun, am an Anunnaki, or what you would call an extraterrestrial. Extraterrestrial. Look at this. Extra meaning in addition to terra, which means of the earth, and astral, which means from the stars. I am what you call an angelic being, an Elohim, from the 8th planet called Risk, which has 1 moon called Shishki of its own. This galaxy, the 19th galaxy called Ilion, originally referred to as heaven, known as Elysium in Greek, has 3 suns, one called Shemesh, another called Utu, and another called Apsu, which means it's a tri-solar system with 38 moons and 19 planets, each with its own number of moons. I have incarnated here in this form to act as a human being for the sole purpose of saving the children of the Elohim or the Anunnaki. Now we say the Nathar, right? And it's called Benat, which is the same word as Bennett. The chosen, he came for the chosen 144,000. This talks about, and again, going back to the book of Revelations where the brother asks, why do we use the Bible? I repeat, the Bible is plagiarized doctrine from ancient Egyptian culture and ancient Sumerian culture. It's our doctrine. It's African doctrine. They just took this stuff. Okay, let's go on. And keep in mind that deserves a whole discussion. Like I said, I am going to do discussions just on that alone, trying to explain the origin of religion, so our people are clear about those things, right? So let's go on. Let's see. So he came for the chosen 144,000, just as Mary of 2,000 years ago was chosen by the Most High. We say Anu, or today we say Re'e. And let me answer that question about the Most High. We say Re'e is the Most High. To be more specific, we say Re'e is the Most High, not Anu. Okay. Called an alien, which is Eli and En, right? Which is alien. Eli means the high, and both of which are names for Anu. To breed the holy thing called Yeshua or Jesus, the real name Tammuz, called Horus, so too the Benat will breed the savior of this time if they hold firm to the rope on your planet Earth. Now, the planet Earth is also referred to as Ard or as Orb or Ard or Ardut or Ki or Terra or even Tiwawat and Temtu, meaning mating of life. However, it was originally called Tiamat. I, Yanun, have come to save the children of the Elohim or Anunnaki, or now we say the Nathar, from being killed as you bring your planet near to what could be its total destruction. So now he's talking about why he incarnated, his purpose, which is the raising of the 144,000. That's the resurrection that we've been talking about. And again, this is referred to the book of Revelations. You can read about the 144,000. And so this is what incarnation is. He was an incarnated being, obviously from another star system, and his whole purpose is to re-educate us on what we are. But it's hard for you to identify what he is until you can identify what you are. And you can't comprehend what you are if you don't do none of the rituals. And that's why I keep saying so many of our students who've come and left this doctrine, what you'll notice, none of them were spiritual. None of them was doing none of the rituals to develop themselves spiritually. Anybody who focus on developing themselves spiritually will begin to comprehend their own spiritual essence and nature. So I repeat, there's no way you're going to comprehend this doctrine if you don't focus on developing yourself. And if you're too lazy to do it, okay. But I'm just here to try to explain that to you. Now, Now what else we got? Let's say it ended. Now it's one of those negative forces. What exactly is the cycle of Leviathan? When exactly is the cycle of Leviathan ending, and what changes are we going to see within the global Black African family? Okay, so when is the cycle of Leviathan ending, and what changes are we going to see within the global Black community? Okay, so that's an interesting question. That's an interesting question. When is the cycle of Leviathan ending? Okay. Well, in order to really comprehend the answer to that particular question, you would have to comprehend the SMAT circle. Okay. So this is something we have been teaching about, the SMAT circle. I'm gonna see if I can find a image of the SMAT circle. Okay, because I think it's very important. It is. I have a specific image of it, and I don't see it. I do. I see it now. Okay, so now here's the SMAT circle. Okay, so if you can see the SMAT circle, right? You see you have the top and you have the bottom. The top says NoopooH, the bottom says Zupu. I repeat, the top says NoopooH and the bottom says Zupu. Now, the forces of Leviathan hit the planet 18 million years ago. 18 million years ago. I repeat, the forces of Leviathan hit the planet 18 million years ago. The forces of a Leviathan, which is Zupu, it lasts for 36 million years. The forces of Leviathan, which is Zupu, it lasts for 36 million years. That's a long time. Okay. The forces of Leviathan is the bottom. It represents the bottom of the smat circle, which is Zupu. The forces of Nupu or Noon, the forces of Noon is Nupu, and that represents 36 million years also. Okay, and the unit. This is the time cycle of the universe. The universe goes through time cycles, right? The universe goes through time cycles. This is the time cycle of the universe. Now, where is humanity? Where is humanity? Humanity right now existing in the universe is on the bottom. It's called 3 South. You see 3 South is on the bottom. That's where humanity is right now. It's on the bottom, 3 South, 3 right here. Okay. This is where humanity is, 3. And so in order to go from 3 South back all the way to 6 East, right? You go from 3 South to 6 East. It takes another 18 million years to go from it's 4 major cycles. The cycle of Ahnun-Re, which is 3 South, the cycle of Atum-Re, which is 6 East, the cycle of Atun-Re, which is 9 North, and the cycle of Amun-Re, which is 6 West. Each of those 4 major cycles takes 18 million years to make a complete resolution of the universe, to go through all cycles, 18 million years. So to get out of Leviathan, if we're in the bottom, which is 3 South, right? To get out of of a Zupu cycle, that takes a total of 18 million years. 18 million years. Now, there's a way to escape that. Okay. And that's why our ancestors know how to, that's just this universe. But keep in mind, we exist in the omniverse of universes. And Ilium and Risk is in a parallel universe. It's not in this universe. I repeat, the universe that the master teacher is talking about that he comes from is in a parallel universe. It's not in this universe. I referred those to a book we put out called A Dimensional Shift. We put out a book called Dimensional Shift. Let's see. Do I have it here? We put out a book called Dimensional Shift. And in that particular book, we go into explaining that Risk, the planet the master teacher is talking about, is in a parallel universe in this particular book. So if you can get access to this book, okay? And so, because different universes means they're in a different time cycle. Meaning all the universes go through the same type of time cycle, but different universe means they can be in a different time cycle. So you have a universe that could be already in the realm of Nupu. You have another universe that could be in the realm of Zupu, but it's in a different time cycle in the realm of Zupu. Okay. And so the masters, they know how to travel throughout the multiverse. They know how to travel throughout the multiverse. And that's something that, now let's go back to the book, Man from the Planet Risk. This is something the master teacher talks about in this particular book. Let me see. I'm going to see if I can find it real quick. What page? Let's see, page 89. So let's go to page 89 in that particular book. Okay, we're on page 89. Now, this is addressing the question about the brother asks, how long Leviathan, the cycle Leviathan. Now, listen to this. Says that we are outside of your stars and or sun's rays. Thus, we have no need of them. We split atoms the same way cells split themselves. Our small crafts run on Omnicron. He's talking about the ships, their ships that the masters use to travel throughout the multiverse. He says their ships, the smaller crafts run on a element called Omnicron, a form of energy you don't have as of yet. It's 115 on an elemental chart. Actually, one element 115 is a theoretical atomic number. Now, this is something that they didn't know back in 1996 when the master was talking about it. Some guy by the name of Bob Lazar, who's famous for talking about Area 51 back in 1989, had talked about the government in this element 115, and now the government is proving that scientists element 115 is a real element, but that's a whole nother subject. But let's go on. It says which place it well beyond any element known on your planet Earth. Now, element 115 is a super heavy substance that powers the reactor in extraterrestrial crafts. We have the energy of 1 million atomic bombs called delta, or the third field, which makes intergalactical travel possible, right? So the masters are able to travel intergalactically. We have a complex network of paths through black holes to link galaxies in hyperspace. We learned long ago to break time barriers. We go back to the zero time reference. We travel thousands of light years in one Earth day, 1,000 years. So meaning that they have the ability with their crafts to travel through black holes. Now, a black hole connects you to a different galaxy, and that different galaxy could be in a different universe, like Ilium. That's why in the connect for the galaxy of Ilium, you have to go through the star constellation of Orion. That's the connection. There's a black hole in Orion that connects you to Ilium. That's why our ancestors was always about in ancient Kemet. It was always about their spirit and soul being able to elevate back to Sahu or Orion. That was the portal that we would take to get back to Ilium. So that was a process. Okay, and so I hope that helped and explaining this whole Leviathan thing about, because that's kind of involved. But what else? What's the difference between the ancestral beings? Where's that question at? Okay, look up the video, the sons of the alien and spirituality versus the religion. The Bible also has on the prophet, blah blah blah. So what happened in death, or when we die, are we reincarnated to human again? I do understand energy never die. Where do we go from here? Okay. All right. So now this question is from T Tiger. He says, so what happens in death or when we die? Are we reincarnated to human again? I do understand energy never die. Where do we go from here? Great question. Okay, now we put out a book. The master teacher wrote a book is on specifically on that subject matter. And the book, I don't know if I have it on file here. I should. I'll upload it because I know I don't have it on file. But well, we put out this book. We this book right here. Let's see. Is there life after death? Is there life after death? Right. But we put out another book called The Spiritual You After the Physical You Die. Now, this book, Is There Life After Death? We wrote this book back in 2000, 2001, something like that. But the other book I'm talking about, that book is recent. The Spiritual You After the Physical You Die. That book came out, maybe about 10 years ago or something like that. Back in 5 years ago, maybe 2015, 2016, right? Is when that book came out. Okay, now, here's the deal. This is why we teach reincarnation. What is the principle that we teach? We teach no, we don't teach resurrection. I'm sorry. Okay, now the core principles. Principle number 2 is resurrection. Resurrection. What does that mean? Our ancestors always taught about resurrection. Our ancestors always taught about resurrection. Okay, the whole goal is to resurrect. So when your physical body dies, your spirit and soul, your spirit connects with your soul, and your soul is able to resurrect you, take you up to a higher dimension, and you go to different star system. And the star system that our soul is able to resurrect up to was the star system of Sahu or Orion, or Sabetu or Cyrus. So we either went to Sabetu, which is Cyrus, and that's predominantly where our females come from. The black woman predominantly comes from the star system of Cyrus, okay, or what they call Sebeptu. And the black man, his spirit forces come from Sahu, which is, they translate that as Orion. So when you resurrect up, right, that those are star constellations, the different galaxies that we go to, okay, before we can get to the other galaxy, Ilium, that I was talking about now, because that's the ultimate goal, is to get back to Ilium. But now, outside of that, now let's say you don't resurrect. For people who do not resurrect, okay, there are 2 things that can happen to you if you do not resurrect upwards. One, you can reincarnate if you do not resurrect upwards. Okay, let's say the reason why you won't resurrect upwards because you never developed yourself spiritually, like most of our people, and majority of our people are going to reincarnate. So when their physical body die, their majority are going to reincarnate. And if you're a negative person, a lot of negative people, they don't get to reincarnate. They become disembodied spirits. That's the whole thing about ghosts. People talk about, they see these ghosts and these spirits on the plane of force. These are spirits that cannot reincarnate no more because they're too freaking negative and they lack the energy to reincarnate. So they get stuck on these spiritual realms, and over time, if you can't reincarnate over time, those spirits, they dissipate back into the universe. Okay, now, like I said, majority of our people reincarnate, but a spirit can only reincarnate but so many times before it becomes a disembodied soul. A spirit has up to 24,000 reincarnation cycles. I repeat, if you don't resurrect, now this is only if you don't resurrect. A spirit, as we teach, a spirit can only reincarnate up to 24,000 times before it becomes a disembodied soul. Now, we put out a book that goes into detail explaining this. It's called The Spiritual You After the Physical You Die. I'll try to post it next week for those individuals who haven't seen it and can get access to this particular book that we teach this. So keep that in mind. Next, what do we have? Let's see. Let's kill ego. Amen. When exactly is the cycle? I got that. Sufis are mystics. Yes, Sufis are mystics. Once those negative forces, feelings like greed, jealousy, envy, lust, uncontrollable desires, delusion, anger, etc., are subdued, then would a cycle of Leviathan be removed from the collective or individual? No, the cycle. That's what I was trying to say. No, the cycle of Leviathan. That's the whole cycle of Zupu. Cycle of Leviathan ain't going nowhere. That's a spirit force. Okay, that's the second spirit force that exists in within the universe. This cycle of Leviathan is basically the cycle of Zupu, and that cycle lasts for 36 million years in the universe. Okay, that's a whole subject all to itself, trying to explain what that really means. That's a whole subject to itself, explaining between the difference between the cycles of NoopooH and the cycles of Zupu. Okay. First thing I recommend is for you guys to watch, for those who haven't watched it, my lectures on the African what was that called? African Science of Existence. Let me try to go to that. Let's see. Okay. I did these videos. It's a 4-part series, the African Science of Existence. Yes, parts 1, parts 2, part 3, and part 4 is right down here. Watch those videos in detail. And I keep telling everybody, watch the videos more than once. Watch the videos more than once. And that goes into trying to explain the SMAT circle. Okay. So I try to give people an education about the SMAT circle. So I highly recommend watch that lecture in detail. Now let's go back. 19th galaxy, Riskians got it deep. Love it, got it. Let's see. It ended in 2000. No, Leviathan did not end in the year 2000. The moon cycle ended in the year 2000. I repeat, the moon cycle ended in the year 2000, but that's not Leviathan. Okay, don't confuse Leviathan with the moon cycle. We were under the spell of Leviathan. That's something else. Okay, meaning adverse to nature, not being in harmony with nature. That's what Leviathan is all about. Leviathan is what produces 6 ether forces. Leviathan is what produces the adverse spirit forces, because we as Africans, we represent the 9 ether forces. Okay, we as Africans represent the 9 ether forces, and then we have opposing forces, which is the forces of Leviathan. Those are 6 ether forces. Those forces ain't going nowhere. Those forces, that's a whole nother discussion. All right, but let's keep going. What is the difference between ancestral beings and Riskians? Okay, great question. What is the difference between ancestral beings and Riskians? Now, first of all, Riskians are ancestral beings. They are our ancestors. We come from Riskians. Riskians, we come from Riskians, right? And so all of our people, all Africans around the omniverse come from Riskians. Okay, we all come from Riskians, or beings like Riskians. Maybe that's the better way to say it. Now, these Riskians, these are like pure spirit beings. Okay, they do incarnate, but for the most part, they're pure spirit beings, and they monitor the multiverse, right? And we as Africans, we come from these beings. So when we talk about our ancestors, sometimes when Africans are referring to specific ancestors, they're talking about people like your grandmother and your grandfather and your great-grandparents and your great-great-grandparents and your great-great-parents, because a lot of our great-great-grandparents, ancestors, they resurrected up into higher dimensions, and they're still connected to us. And they're trying to make contact with us, but because we lost our spiritual insights and knowledge and our third eye closed, we don't know how to communicate with them no more. We used to, and we don't know how to communicate with them no more. So we do try to make a distinction between the Nathar. We say the Nathar, which is like our direct ancestors, that was our great-great-grandparents, and the Riskians, who are universal beings, right? The Riskians like monitor the whole omniverse. They're just a higher version of our ancestors. They're like the most advanced beings in our descendancy that we come from. But we have our direct descendants, direct ancestors, like our great-great-grandparents. So you can contact people who had parents that crossed over, people who had great parents that crossed over. That's why people who, if you study the near-death experience, like people keep talking about, I saw my mother when I had a near-death experience, or I saw my grandmother, or my uncle came to me. Your family is still connected to you. Your actual blood relatives, people you will recognize, and then there are people that you don't recognize that are in your family that are on the higher dimensions. They try to communicate with us all the time. but we're not in tune. We're not in tune with the spirit realms or the higher dimensions, so we don't know how to make contact. Again, this is the whole point of our whole doctrine, is to teach you how to make contact again. Okay, so keep that in mind, right? Keep that in mind, that our whole goal is to re-educate ourselves to make contact. Let's go. What else we got here? Let's see. What's the positive forces? The positive forces of divine love wipes away negative forces, feelings, hate, cannot live in love. That's right. You got that right. They can't live in love. Then I'm just reading through your comments, guys, because it's a lot of stuff here. So I don't want to miss anyone. Well, I'm trying not to. Okay. And so I'm taking my time. So powerful. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Also, if our people don't wake up, acknowledge, and return to our own culture, we will be taken up as food, like the food for the gods. Yeah, listen, yo, that's real talk about our people being food for the gods. We watch that movie Jupiter Ascending. That's a good movie that talks about the planet Earth. Guys, the planet Earth is a farm. The planet Earth is a farm. They be harvesting humans. That's a whole nother thing about studying about the secret government and what their overlords are all about, and how they rule this planet and why this planet is important to them. Okay, that's a whole. We put out a book called The Proof, and in that book called The Proof, we had on the front of the cover called The Farm. That this planet Earth is I don't know what else to say about it. But there, you can go. This guy Corey Good, he's on the internet. He's always talking about it. Okay, Corey Good, he's talking about these ETs, man. But now the government, you guys see, the government is now exposing that the ETs are real. They talking about the UFOs is real and all that stuff is all on the news now. We've been saying this for years. The master teacher has been trying to explain to the general public about existence and about the beings exist throughout the multiverse, and people calling him crazy for years. And he said the government is they're eventually gonna tell the public that UFOs are real. All this stuff is real, and they're now doing it. But let's go on. Also, if our people, okay, yep, let's see, Black African race or Sabians are incredibly powerful, but have lost the great knowledge of ourselves. That's right. Okay, Tiger, how do we know that is true? What facts come with that? I never heard of them, but all right. Why are we here, and what happens to those who don't fall in line or even hear the message you teach? Got it. How do we know it's true? Right. Remember, our whole doctrine, this is to talk to T Tiger, right? And you're asking me about the whole, what I said about the reincarnation cycles. The only way you're going to know that's an actual fact, like I said, the whole point of our doctrine is you don't know because you lost your knowledge about spirituality. That's why you don't know. And our whole point of our doctrine is to re-educate you spiritually. If you don't, I'm giving you all the keys, all the tools on how to develop yourself spiritually. When you develop yourself spiritually, then you can reconnect with your oversoul. Once you reconnect with your oversoul, you can restore your memory. That's the problem with our people. We forgot our origins, the memory of our origins. It's in your DNA. Remember, you're nothing but a copy of your mother and father. Your father gave up his sperm cell. Your mother gave up her egg cell that fused together, and it produced you. So all that genetic information of your mother and father is inside you, and all the genetic information of your mother and father is nothing but the products of their mother and father, and that genetic is in them, and so on and so forth. All generations, all are going back to your original ancestors. It's all in your DNA, but you forgot how to tap into your your genetic memory, so to speak. And the only way you can do that is developing yourself spiritually. It's not about believing what we teach. It's about knowing what we teach. And so, and the first step of knowing is you have to develop. Know this. Here's a fact. Africans always taught about spirituality. African culture is always about spirituality. We just lost the knowledge of how to develop ourselves spiritually, which is what we call resurrection. In fact, and before I leave, I want you to guys, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you a clip, right? From our good brother by the name of Asher Kwesi, a student of Dr. Ben, who's been going to Kemet, Egypt. He does tours to Egypt. He's been doing it for over 30 years, I think. And he goes into this subject matter and so, about resurrection, about our culture, about how your ka and your ba, your spirit and soul, has to unite. In fact, y'all need to see this. Y'all need to see this before I go on this subject matter. We ain't the only one teaching this. This is our good brother right here, Asher Kwesi. Okay, Asher Kwesi, and he's been going to Kemet, to Egypt, like I said, for the last, I think, 30 some odd years, teaching this information, educating our people about our culture. So I want y'all to listen to this.
Is most profound because, as I said before, behind me you see a dilapidated pyramid here. It doesn't look like much to you.
Hi there, welcome to Forward. Come on in. I'm Dr. Nate Favini.
After all, after you visit the Giza Plateau, you say, why would you bring us here to see a mound here? A rubble. After all, when we saw the Great Pyramid of Khufu, a perfect equilateral plane pyramid, and now we see a mound of rubble here. We're during the time of the 5th and 6th dynasty. They were not building on the same level that you saw of Imhotep that you're going to see in a few minutes with the Step Pyramid, and also the 4th dynasty that we see with Akhet Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure. But yet, what makes this pyramid profound is something that we don't see in the Old Kingdom pyramids. I mean, we're talking about the pyramids of the 3rd and 4th dynasty. This is also the Old Kingdom as well. But what's different is, if you go inside of the Great Pyramid, and today if you go inside of Seneferu, you'll come inside of the chamber, but there's no writing at all. Even though it's as impressive as it is, but when you come in here, something has changed. The whole idea of salvation and resurrection, that many of the religions base their foundation on salvation and resurrection. Here we see the prototype of that whole spiritual system, where Teddy is now writing, first starting with Unas, that we'll see over there when we go over to that area. He first is now starting to write in the Medu of salvation and resurrection into the spiritual life. The idea that we have in the Western world that we're going to heaven, and most of us want to give up all the money to go to heaven because the preachers have scared us to death through purgatory. That if you don't give up the money, you're going to burn in hell and you're going to roast forever and ever. But in Kemet, they didn't have such an idea of scaring you to death for you to give up the money. But here it was based off of a spiritual system of the Sahu. What is the Sahu? It's the spiritual body. And that spiritual body was based off of the Ka, represented as 2 arms up, meaning the spirit, and the Ba is the soul. The joining of the Ka and the Ba, that provided a transformation, as well as a Kapara, transformation of the spiritual body to leave the physical body called the Ka. They understood the physical body would stay on earth. We're going to get deeper into that in the Valley of the Kings.
Let me stop right there. Did you hear him? Our ancestors taught that once you the uniting of your Ka and your Ba, the Ka is the spirit, the Ba is the soul. So when you transcend the physical, your physical body, when your physical body so-called die, you resurrect by uniting of the Ka and the Ba. Now I'm going to replay that because you really need to pay attention to what he's trying to say.
But the spiritual body, and that spiritual body was based off of the Ka, represented as 2 arms up, meaning the spirit, and the Ba is the soul. The joining of the Ka and the Ba, that provided a transformation, as well as a Kapara, transformation of the spiritual body to leave the physical body called the Ka. They understood the physical body would stay on earth. We're going to get deeper into that in the Valley of the Kings. But the spiritual body would rise up. The Romans didn't understand that. they took it literally, that the physical body would rise up because they did not understand spiritual things. But so here, it was not about Teddy, his physical body rising up. It was about his spiritual Sahu body rising up. You're going to see the glyphs at the Temple of Heru and show the symbolism that we see in the artwork of the European Western, I have to say it as it is, white supremacy Christianity, because the angelical realm is all filled with them. All right, as Dr. Clark, peace be upon him, said, what they did was colonize the afterlife. They say we in charge of this too. When I was 9 years old, I asked the preacher, why don't we have any black angels up there? I dare you to ask a question like that. So I knew something was wrong right then. So again, but we're going to see how these representations develop. Here is the foundation of what a lot of things that we have been taught to believe. And that's why Kemet has been feared by the Western church, first starting with the Byzantine Roman Christians. And yet those of us who are Christians, then we can understand, if you study the African Christianity, it started here.
Yep.
With the Gnostics. Christianity started in Egypt. Look it up for yourself.
Yep.
It started right here. Why did it start here? Because the spiritual ideas that you're taught to believe started here, that even predates the Christianity era. And they took ideas and formulated it. That's why the Romans exterminated the Gnostics.
Okay, you hear that? Another confirmation. Our brother, good brother Asher Kwesi, is telling y'all Christianity started in Egypt, that they stole that. The Romans plagiarized our doctrine and turned it into religion. It was a spiritual doctrine that we had. The whole story about Asar and Aset and Horus, and how Asar resurrected and then gave birth to the Christ child, which is Horus. They plagiarized that stuff from us. But let's keep going.
Who are the Gnostics? The knowers of the truth. They were the conduit of that day that drew from the ancient spiritual system of what we see here in the Valley of the Kings, and you're going to go, and they understood it. But the Romans, they were about the spiritual enslavement of humanity. So here they created an image for people, but they knew that the Gnostics understood this truth, so they exterminated all of them. And those were the North African Gnostic Christians, first starting with Cyprian, where they cut off his head. We're going to get deeper into that when we get in Upper Asia. So I'm saying these things for some people who might be among us who may be Christians, to understand that the Christianity is coming up out of the spiritual system of ancient Kemet here. And all we have.
Wait, before you scroll away, you need to hear this. Republicans across the country are moving
to do is go back. We can't start with contemporary things, because it's through the contemporary things we see more contamination and corruption of the true spiritual ideas that originated up out of the Kemetic minds of the Nile Valley right here. They are the originators of it. So all the others who came, they just came and plagiarized. So it's like in a classroom. If somebody plagiarized from your paper, what grade do they get? An F. Because if they stand up and try to talk on your paper, they just can't get it all right because they didn't create it. But you got it all right. So what does the Western world get from plagiarizing from ancient Kemet and still don't understand the spirituality of it? A what? An F. So this is what we're looking at here. So everybody can't go down here. Tomb of Faith. Here is the Portetta, as it's called, the House of Eternity, going into the afterlife. Here we see the foundation of spiritual salvation and resurrection. As I said before, you were very impressed with the Giza Plateau, is that correct? Yes. And then here, even though this pyramid is dilapidated, but what we see here is the earliest writing of salvation and resurrection. And the Giza Plateau, you go up inside the Great Pyramid, there's no writing at all. It's just a big chamber and granite stones, even though it's 50 tons each. But here we see now the earliest language called the Medu Neter, that the Greeks refer to as the hieroglyphics. We see the Shanu, just like the Shanu that you bought. This is Teddy for his resurrection. Originating his stars up here, but on the other side you'll see the stars, and going into the spiritual realm that we call heavens today. This is the foundation of the Western religion's belief. Whether you be Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Christian, and so forth. This is the prototype. This predates the religions of Western world by thousands of years. Without this, what we are taught to believe, whether I said, whether Christians or Muslims or Jews and so forth, that without this, that would not exist. We see symbols here, like this. Are you familiar with this symbol? Right here. Can't see it.
I see it.
Okay, somebody got a little light? It's right here. This symbol right here. Here we go. It is right here. It's a cross. What?
To the right, up a little.
Right there. To the right, right there.
Oh, yeah.
Up high, up there, right there.
It is, okay. Okay, see it? Now, did Christianity exist yet? No. That cross is called the Amsu. That means for a spiritual resurrection. The Romans didn't understand it and took it literally as a physical resurrection. It had nothing to do with Christianity, but they copied ideas like that you're going to see when we get to Upper Egypt. And this symbol is the cock. See the cock? What do you see? Two arms up. Some of us are familiar with that. You know how you got the Holy Ghost in the church. Hope it was y'all.
Okay, so you guys get the idea. The brother Asher Kwesi, you asking, he's out of California. He still does those trips. I think his website is New Kemet. New Kemet. I think he calls his website or whatever, and he does those trips every year to Kemet. He's still doing them. I mean, he's an elder now, but he does those trips, and he's based out of California. And every year they go to Kemet and they do like a 2-week tour where he's giving our people an education about our ancestors and our culture that we taught back in ancient Kemet. It's the same thing we've been teaching, you know, which is the origin of Wu-Sabat. Is coming out of ancient Kemet, or really ancient Nubia, because Wu-Sabat is really going to pre-dynastic Egypt, before the dynasties, right? Our culture is really focused on before those dynasties, because that's a whole nother discussion about dynastic Egypt versus pre-dynastic Egypt. But a lot of our culture that we're talking about, Wu-Sabat and Wu-Nawap, is going back to pre-dynastic Egypt, about our, you know, with our ancestors. And because by the time our culture got into, or by the time we got into dynastic Egypt, a lot of the things we were teaching in Wu-Sabat were being taught in our sacred orders, in the mystery schools. A lot of stuff wasn't being openly taught like it used to be, and when it goes back to pre-dynastic Egypt. So, but that's a whole education all to itself. Point being, our culture was always about resurrection, and that's what the brother was trying to explain. And that's what we're trying to explain now. Our people have gotten away from our ancient culture all over the world. They don't understand their nature. So I know a question came up about doing a detailed discussion on the oversoul, and yes, we will. We have so many topics to cover. Trust me, we're just getting started. But as you notice, the beginning of these discussions was about trying to introduce people to who the master teacher is, what the purpose of the master teacher, what he represents, why he is important, why what he teach is important, and why you guys need to comprehend this. So I'm trying my best to give you guys a comprehensive education about who the master teacher is and what our role in our doctrine is all about, what our goals, purpose, objectives, right? So we're at the end of our time, and I know I'm a little bit over, but it was necessary to address these things. You know, it's because there's so much information. We can be here, you know, for a long time. And like I said, there's so many things that we got to go into. But I repeat, guys, watch these lectures more than once. I repeat, watch these discussions more than once. Take notes, study this information, embody this information. Watch our other lectures that we put out there before. I keep telling you guys, it's so important. Okay. It's so important to watch this stuff more than once and spread the word. We're not getting enough views, guys. You got to spread the word, because the more people that get exposed to this information, the better. We have to grow, and it's only going to grow by you guys helping us grow. You guys getting out there and spreading the word and letting people know why they need this information. Because our people are horrible at making decisions today that is destroying us. We're killing ourselves because of our ignorance. And we must re-educate ourselves. We must re-educate ourselves. Okay? I can't stress that enough. So, with that being said, I end our class with prayer, right? Our prayer system, which is so important. This time I'm going to make sure that you guys get to see it because I brought it up earlier and you guys didn't get to see the prayer system. And for those who want a copy of the prayers, I have no problem sending you guys a copy of our prayers. All you got to do is ask me, and I will definitely get it to you. The prayer system. This is the beginning of developing yourself spiritually, speaking in your language, in your tones. Okay, speaking in your tones. Again, I didn't get to go into the concept of morphic resonance because that is a principle you guys must comprehend. You must comprehend the concept of morphic resonance. Let's see. There's a book we put out that you guys must get access to, and I want to show you this book just so that you know. If I can find it, I will. Right here. This book is Actual Facts number 46. It's called Intelligent Design, Divine Design, or Plot of Aliens. Okay, I've talked about this book a lot. It's extremely powerful. In this particular book, this book right here, it goes into a lot of it goes into about our genetics. Remember I said before in the other book, the Man for the Planet Risk, the master teacher was explaining, in order to comprehend him and what he's teaching, you got to comprehend genetics. You got to comprehend your own genetics. Okay, in the bottom right here, this is on page 18. He's talking about morphic resonance. You guys have to comprehend what this word means, what this concept is, a morphic resonance and morphic genetics, your morphic genetic code, what that means. You have to comprehend that. You have to comprehend matrix. What is a matrix? Right here, paragraph 94. What is a matrix? This book is extremely important to comprehend these concepts, okay? In order to really grasp what we mean by resurrection and developing yourself spiritually. Now, getting back to, like I said, we end the class with prayer. One last thing. I'm sorry. one other last thing. There's another book, guys. This book here, Ansar Cult, Rebuttal to the Slanderers. Guys, you can get this book on Scribes. I highly recommend reading this book, studying this book. This book the master teacher put out in 1989. The master's been having slanderers since he's been around. And they've been saying the same things over and over again. He does a great job back in his book in 1989 explaining who he is, what he represents, why we teach what we teach. Now, this, again, keep in mind, this is when we was teaching our Sufi doctrine when we were in Islam. Now, the Sufi doctrine is just it's an infant step. It's like a baby knowledge to Egyptian doctrine. I think that's the best way I can explain it. It's like baby knowledge to our Egyptian doctrine. It's like an introduction to our Egyptian doctrine. Okay. And you can get that book on Scribes. It's on there. You can get that book on Scribes, Rebuttal to the Slanderers. This is extremely important book because all of the negative stuff they're saying about the master today, they were saying the same thing back then, and the master teacher answers those things in detail. Okay. So in addition to the things I did. So now let me get back to ending the class and a prayer. So we ended always with a prayer system, and then I'll see you guys next week. But let's get started with our prayer. Abdul Kalam Namasat Ubazun Amag Kasaman Afar Pop Ut. Anuki Jawab Pa Ashuk M Pop Ut. Wu Kalet Ashuk Kawun Jiref Naya. Anuki Kasaman M Pop Ut. Wu Pop Ut Kawun Kasaman M Naya. Anuki Wahu Ama Pop Ut. Wu Pop Ut Kawun Wahu Ama Naya. Nakuk Kador Naju Amah Kasamun M Pop Ut. Wu Khabub Amah Shikasun. Nakuk Kador Kawan Kalab Pafaf Nakuk Daya Jawab Pop Ut. Amah Wasu Amah Dayani Kawun Lake Bakui Jawab Pop Ut. Anuki Yabab B Nafasni. Pop Ut Kawun. Anuki. Pop Ut Kador. Nakuk Kador. Pop Ut Amul. Nakuk Amul. Lahahum Manahnun. Layahum Manahnun. Anhum Ata Karahum. Anhum Ata Karakum. Anhum Ata Karanun. Anhum Ata Jawaf Naya. Anhum Ata Naya Wu Anukihum. Ye Ashuk Re'e. Asmua Jayenun. Ye Unataru Akfuknun. Anun Ata Karaukum. Ye Unataru Akfuknun. Akfuknun, Akfuknun. Yeu Natarunun. Anun. Atun. Atun. Amun. Okay. I thank you all for showing up and participating. I send love to all and everyone in the positive. And until next week, be safe and take care. And why do, family?